Hi and welcome to IWCTV NOW. This week's segment is Isle Talk, giving you all the latest news affecting you on the Isle of Wight. Firstly this week, we sent our off-site reporter Cara Tomlinson to find out about fracking.
Hello, I'm Cara Tomlinson and I'm here at Longstone Motterson. So, what is fracking? Well, fracking is the process of drilling down to the earth before a high-pressured water mixture is directed at a rock and the gas inside is released. It isn't happening in the UK, but it is under debate.
Motterson is one of the many places of outstanding natural beauty in the Isle of Wight. However, there are plans to frack here, proving to concern a vast amount of islanders. But why? The reason is, many have described the potential threats of fracking to be things such as human health, the local environment, earthquakes and the global climate. Organisations such as Frack-Free Isle of Wight have been raising awareness for these potential risks and have been uniting concerned islanders who want to stop the fracking and spread the word. If areas such as this were to be fracked, an average of 400 tanker trucks will be needed to carry water at a heavy load of 1 to 8 million gallons and supplies to and from the site. Up to 600 chemicals are used in fracking fluids, meaning that methane gas and toxic chemicals leach out from the system and contaminate nearby groundwater in the process. The fracking fluid used is not biodegradable, meaning that up to 70% of the toxic fluid that is not recovered is left in the ground. The question is this the price to pay for natural gas? There are possible benefits that fracking can bring. Fracking is an access to an alternative source of fuel. Though we may not need it right now, there will come a time when gas and oil may become scarce. Fracking can be the answer to that problem. Not only that, but it will decrease the dependency on foreign oil, since fracking can be done within local jurisdictions. This graph shows how the opinions of fracking have changed over the past 3 years. The support for fracking has decreased from 27% to 23%, while opposing has increased from 21% to 29%. As you can see, the opinions on fracking have changed drastically over the past 3 years. The areas of outstanding natural beauty and the proposed areas of fracking on the island are shown on this map. As you can see, areas of outstanding natural beauty are mostly covered by potential fracking.
So, the debate rolls on. Do the advantages to the gas and oil industries outweigh the environmental issues, or is it just too big a risk to take? I'm Cara Tomlinson, back to you in the studio.
In the studio today, we're joined by Morgan Curtis, Sylvia May and Jan Harper-Whale from Frack-Free Isle of Wight. So, firstly, do you think there are any benefits to fracking in the long term?
In the long term, I don't think there are. I think some of the benefits you might hear from fracking are the more short-term ones. Maybe there might be an economic boost of some jobs or some ways that the local economy would be supported, but I think when you're thinking in the long term, you're really looking at negative impacts.
Okay, so Sylvia, which areas exactly are going to be fracked on the island?
Well, at the moment we're only really aware of 2 areas. Definitely in Arlene, because there's an existing well that was drilled there in the 1970s, but because the oil pay there couldn't actually be removed at that time because they didn't have the technology to do it, it was abandoned. So now they're definitely going to set up, they hope, a second well there. They're hoping to get about 17 million barrels of oil out of Arlene. They believe that there are 219 million, but only 17 million are viable to extract. So that's really a key area. And the second area is off the south coast. There is an offshore element called the M prospect, and they're hoping to bring that into the license and be able to drill for oil onshore out under the sea, if you like they've done at Witch Farm, for example. But at the moment, we have very little information. There is nothing coming out of UCOG. So we're not quite sure how that's going to progress. So our main focus of attention at the moment is for the village of Arlene.
Okay, Jan, do you think that with all the fracking, tourism could be affected on the island?
If you consider that the island has been a tourist attraction for many, many, many years, and that we have areas of scientific beauty, we have National Trust land, and we have the most beautiful coastline. The tourism is going to be impacted by any intrusion from fracking on the landscape because of things like Walk the Wight. That's had huge success over the years. Many, many, many people come to enjoy the landscape, and they will be deterred from coming because they might see an oil rig spring up on their walk from one end of the island to the other. In the same token, the hotel industry will be impacted because of the health concerns. The amount of traffic that is going to be coming to the island, the trucks, the lorries, and our island roads are not the best in the world, as we know. And nothing has been considered from the industry that would impact on our roads with all this heavy traffic.
Okay. So, do you think that there is enough information about fracking available for the public?
I think that's actually one of our biggest concerns as a group. As Fracking Isle of Wight, what we're trying to do is educate the public. I think the companies that want to drill, UCOG is the one you might hear people talking about, haven't provided any information yet to people on the island. And so we as a group are trying to counteract that. And we've been doing public meetings in different towns all over the island. So if anyone watching wants us to come and talk to them and provide more information, we're more than happy to.
So, do you think that fracking could have environmental and health risks?
It's interesting. We're talking about fracking. I just want to clarify that fracking is what happens under the ground. Okay, the actual impact. You have to fracture these layers in order to get the fuel from it. And that term fracturing and fracking have kind of become closely aligned. So even though, for example, they're talking about conventional drilling on the island, a lot of that actually involves some fracking. So I just want to clarify that. And the fracturing process and the fracking process, because drilling is an industrialized activity, does have environmental impacts. Most of the studies that we're looking at are coming from the States and from Australia because they've been doing it there for 10 years, sadly. And it's now, there is a lot of information that's coming out and being put together to indicate health implications, implications for local communities who suddenly there is an increase in cancer, an increase in pulmonary disease, immune system diseases that are believed to be linked to the activity. Because if you imagine the drilling that is going to happen because it is such an industrial process with chemicals, silica, fumes from HGV traffic on a constant basis for anything up to 2 years. Also, rigs are lit at night, they function at night, so there are noise implications, and all this, it is now being discovered, can actually have impacts on health. But unfortunately, because there's, well, I say unfortunately, I'm glad there isn't a lot of activity in the UK at the moment, but because in the UK we don't have enough of a study programme at the moment, most of the information we're getting is from the other continents. But yes, I mean, we are pretty confident that there are environmental and health impacts.
Okay, Jan. Do you think that there are any other sources of energy available to us that would be better than fracking?
Yes. Sustainability for our energy is becoming a huge focus because of fracking and what the people who have risen up against the idea of fracking. The island is so wonderfully placed to be able to offer sustainability. We have wind, we have wave, and we have sun. Therefore, the island, and I'm passionate about this, that the island become totally sustainable for our next generation and the next generations after that. It is the most humane way to look after our earth and to cater for our vulnerable. To keep the heat going, we need sustainability.
Okay, so simple yes or no. Would you agree with fracking on the island?
No.
No?
I don't agree with any form of drilling on the island, whether it's conventional or hydraulically fracked, nothing at all. It's not necessary. We're a very small island. The impact would be incredible, and I don't believe it's necessary at all. I think there are other ways that we can solve our energy problems, it's particularly locally.
Can I just give a message from a Dakota elder who is suffering right now in America?
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Iknsni eknaga ni tawa, pesi huktan to ken ni eka, ektka yakan kin mini. Do not put your muck where you mean to drink the water.
Okay, some very powerful messages there. We also reached out to various fracking companies to allow them to give their views, but unfortunately they gave us no response. Well, thank you very much, Morgan, Sylvia and Jan, for joining us today. An important issue facing students at the moment is the looming student debt. With student debt on the rise and the government making it harder and harder for students to be able to repay their university fees, are students being put off the idea of university? Is university worth the risk? We sent our reporter Matt to find out exactly what students think.
Here at the Isle of Wight College, students are always thinking about their future, about going to university, about how much student debt they might get in. We're going to see if the risk is really worth it. In recent years, there has been a record high number of students choosing to study at university, with data revealing that even the students living in the UK's most disadvantaged areas are now more inclined to apply for higher education. UCAS revealed that the January 2015 deadline had around 592,290 applicants submitted. This was 10,000 more than the previous record set in 2011. According to a survey created by Save the Student, even though the number of students choosing to go to university has gone up, so has the cost of student debt, proving to be a concern for many potential university goers. The average student in 2014 spent around £735 a month, and with 4 in 5 students worrying about money and 50% of students worrying about paying back the student loan, it is a massive cause for concern. This graph shows how students spend their money during university, with a large portion going on rent and food. So should there be other options for students who do not wish to go to university? Matt Bennington, IWCTV NOW, signing off.
We have with us here Arlene Cooper, the Curriculum Manager for the Arts and Media Department, and Joel Ward, a student considering going to university. Thank you both for joining me today. So firstly, Arlene, do you think that university is worth the risk given its increased level of debt?
I do think it's worth the risk depending on what you want to do in the long term. There are some careers that without a degree you can't enter those. You cannot be a doctor without a degree in medicine. You cannot be a lawyer without a degree in law. In some areas, I think that students do need to look at other options. There are more higher level apprenticeships coming online. Engineering this year, for the first time, they've rolled out something called the degree apprenticeship, which means that you're paid by a company while you do your degree. And I think as time goes on, more and more, and hopefully some in our industry, in the media industry, would take up that option, and I think that would be a good option for students.
Yeah. So Joel, are you considering going to university?
Yeah, I am. I think it is a really good thing to do because it can give you all the skills you need for the career you want to go into. And they can just sort of set you up as well sometimes after, and it can just lead into better careers for what you want to do.
Are you put off the prospect of going to university, given the debt?
I am, because it is a lot of debt to pay off, but I do understand you can pay it back over a long period of time if you're earning enough, but it is quite a big sort of thing to have on your shoulders that you don't really, because nobody really wants debt to constantly be over their head.
Okay, Arlene, do you think that lower income families are less likely to apply to university now?
I do think they are. I think it's quite a frightening prospect, as Joel said. You're looking at a long-term debt, and then don't forget on top of that, you guys are going to want to own houses, buy cars, eventually bring up, find a partner, bring up families. That's all very money orientated, and I think that is making a lot of people very worried about it, which I think is a big shame.
Okay, so if you could change the student debt system, how would you change it?
Gosh, that's a big question. I think that, many years ago, it was all grant driven. It was all, students didn't have to pay individually. Lots more people went to university. There is an argument for saying a lot of the people who did go to university then probably went for the experience rather than what they wanted to do in their careers. I would like to see there be more government help for students across the board, because I think it is important that our young people study to a higher level without the fear of it, really. I think a lot of students now, it ruins the university experience because they're thinking about the long term. I've got to get out of here and I've got to start earning as much money as I can, and I think that would be a shame. So I would like to see the actual tuition fees reduced considerably, and I'd like to see more help for young people in terms of accommodation, in terms of support for where you're living, because in many ways this is the first time a lot of young people have lived independently, and you've got no idea what the cost is going to be. It's not something you've dealt with. So I'd like to see more support for students in that respect as well.
Okay, Joel, so you're planning on going to university. How do you think you're going to get through the debt?
I already have a part-time job working, so where I work is McDonald's. They can sort of transfer you to another store nearer to wherever you want to move. So I would continue working there in my spare time at uni and just earn as much as I can to afford living, food and a house and everything, and to pay back the debt. So for me it's okay, but for a lot of people I know it is hard to get jobs and you do have to look around. But if you can sort of get a job that is flexible and you can do it part-time around uni, it's a very useful thing to do.
So you think it's a necessity to have a part-time job at university?
Yeah, definitely. It will just help with everything, with food, with electrics, with everything.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So with so much debt, you're not put off by going to university?
The thought of the debt is still really off-putting, and it is going to take a lot of consideration, but definitely with a part-time job it does make it a lot easier on you.
Okay, some interesting points there. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this week. On next week's show, we're going to be talking about the Starbucks at the college and finding out what students think of it, as well as some opinions on the canteen in general. Well, it's goodbye from my guests, Arlene and Joel, and goodbye from me. This is Will Harrison signing off for IWCTV Now. Goodbye.